Welcome back, or welcome to Ensuring Success 2022. We are so glad you're here with us today. We are here presenting you with 14 hours of continuing professional education over the course of 2 days, and we're so glad you're here with us. I am Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor Magazine, and I would like to mention the names of our sponsors before we go forward so that you know who is making this possible for us to have this great event and offer you all this free CPE. And those sponsors are ADP, Avalara, BotKeeper, CorePay1, CPA.com, Canopy, Caseware, Field Guide, eFile4Biz, Intuit, Right Networks, SafeSend, Sage, SureLink, TaxFile, TechGuru, Xero, and Zoho. I'd also like to mention some people have asked if our sessions are going to be available for viewing after the event ends, and they will be available on the Ensuring Success website in about a week to 10 days. So by all means, look for that later on if you'd like to encourage other people to visit our sessions, or if you want to watch them again, that'll be great. I'd like to mention that our sponsor for this session is BotKeeper, as you can see here, and my co-moderator and I are dressed appropriately for our sponsor. Also, I wanted to mention to you how a CPE is accomplished for these sessions. So we will break 3 times during this session, and each time we'll have one CPE code that appears on the bottom of the screen, and you'll know it's CPE time because Alexandra will push this bell. Okay, to remind you to pay attention to your screen and record the code that we put at the bottom of the screen. And when you get that code, you'll have 3 different codes. Save them at the end of the day, or the end of tomorrow, or the end of next week, or whenever you want to. Go back to the Ensuring Success site, click Get CPE Credit at the top of the screen, and you will enter those 3 codes for each session you attend. Right next to the codes, you click a Go button, and that's not enough. You have to then click a Download button after you click Go, and you can download your certificates right there on the screen. I also want to mention that our hashtag is December CPE, and we would love to have you talking about us on social media. This session today is Your Firm's Employee Improvement Plan, and I am joined by an incredible cast here. To my right, Jeff Phillips, and then Garrett Wagner, and then Enrico Palmerino, and my co-moderator, Alexandra DeFelice, and I will have them introduce themselves to you now. Jeff, want to start?
All right, I will. Hi, my name is Jeff Phillips. I'm the CEO of Paget Business Services. Paget is an accounting firm that serves small businesses around North America. We've been in business for almost 60 years, but our business model is we're a franchisor, so firms are franchisor members of our firm. I've been doing that for 2 years, and prior to that, I founded a company called Accounting Fly, which is a recruitment agency, and we specialize in the placement of remote accountants. So we work with accounting firms and corporate finance teams. So about 20 years of experience around staffing and recruiting for and retaining accountants.
I am Garrett Wagner, CEO and founder of C3 Evolution Group, and we provide innovative solutions to today's accounting firms.
Hi, I'm Enrico Palmerino, founder and CEO of BotKeeper, and we built an operating system for accounting firms to deliver CAS services to their clients in a more efficient and effective way.
And I am Alexandra DeFelice, Director of Marketing and Business Development for Payne & Fears Law Firm in Southern California, and co-moderating with Gail today and tomorrow, all the sessions.
All right, thanks everybody. And just one other thing I wanted to mention, there is an Ask a Question box on the bottom of your screen. Feel free to enter questions for our speakers, or if you have any questions about, if you're having any technical difficulty with the event, you can enter a question about that, and our tech team is standing by to help. Or if you have any comments about the topic we're discussing, feel free to share that as well. So what we've seen in lots and lots of surveys lately is complaints about there not being enough people to hire, that there are way more jobs than there are available employees at the moment. And so we'd like to address this from a different perspective, and that is the perspective of how to retain your existing employees and how to keep them from wanting to join the ranks of those who might be looking for jobs. So I'd like to talk a little bit initially about what kind of things might make staff people want to leave where they're working. Want to start, Jeff?
Yeah.
Kick us off.
Well, I think I can frame the problem by throwing this out. The turnover in firms that are less than 20 million in revenue is about 20%. So not only is, yes, it's hard to hire people, but you're dealing with the people that you have. You're losing, a fifth of them every year. Not to mention the hires you got to make when you to make up for growing. So we do have a problem around that. And so the question is, well, why is that happening? The answers are usually have to do with compensation and work-life balance and a lack of flexibility. I think as a profession, we probably got behind the 8 ball. And other professions maybe jumped ahead of us around issues like work-life balance, dealing with burnout and flexibility. We know that's based off of issues that we deal with in our recruitment agency, Accounting Fly, that's at a broad level, that's why people are leaving. So we got to work on the value proposition for employment and accounting, for sure. But those are some of my thoughts of why people leave.
Yeah, it's something that hasn't changed in forever.
Right.
I mean, Jeff, when we first started talking about this many years when we first met, it was the same thing. The challenges of retaining the people that work for you. And yeah, I mean, you've got to look at this no matter whether it's our industry, any other industry in America or across the world. Okay, usually why people say they leave, it's usually money's what they give. But when you unpack that, that's not really why they left. They're looking for, like what you kind of touched base on, they want more autonomy in how they work, they want flexibility, they want mastery, they want to feel good about their job, and they want purpose. And there's nothing that we do as a profession that really drives that, and we like to keep being like, well, if I don't change anything, so I hear a lot, well, if I don't do anything differently, will they stay? No, obviously it's not working, it's getting worse. You've got to accept that this carrot and stick to be a partner isn't going to do it. Paying them more money isn't going to do it. You need to provide them true motivating factors, autonomy, mastery, and purpose in their job, which aren't complicated, which is the good news, but it takes work to do that, and accounting firms are just hesitant to do that. The solution's right there. We've talked about it for as long as I can remember, and I'm sure you guys see that too. You just got to start to do it, recognize things have to change.
It's also just an aging population, too. Mm-hmm. I think they say the average age of an accountant's 55. So that means you're going to have a population that will be 75% gone in the next 15 years.
It's less than that. It's even, I think they said like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
That population's going out, so you're right, yeah.
So
if the economy goes up, I think you'll have a lot more retirements.
Yes, that too. So I don't think it's even a money, money, work-life balance. They're just going all in on the life balance side of the equation at that perspective. So
Didn't we see that? Isn't what the Great Resignation really was accelerated retirements? A lot of the people that left the workforce were baby boomers who decided to retire before they were going to. So I mean, we're seeing this play out in real time already. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and your point is really important. It's not just a problem of we've had this trend. It's what the industry demographic, this huge retirement pool is here, beginning to retire. We've got way less people coming in. It used to be that like 1 for 1 in a firm of like, okay, one partner leaves, you hire a person, you make someone else a partner, it kind of stays even. Well now, like you said, if you could have 75% of the profession leave in 3 to 5 years, we're not seeing that many new people come in.
you're seeing a shortage. I mean, the stats were we needed 110,000 accountants this year, incrementally, and 70,000 showed up. So that's a 50K delta, and that's just this year alone. And I bet there's like a lot of unreported, gaps there as well, just in terms of retiring, changing. They might not retire, but I know accountants that are taking jobs at Pilates studios or just totally changing their career. So
what we tend to see is if there's 70, 80,000 that start in our profession, in 2 years, about 80% are gone. Okay, so now you're left with, you said you may need, what, 150, 110?
yeah.
You get 70, you lose 80% of it, what are you left with, like 10? So you're 100,000 short? Yeah, I mean, time to really focus on what you've got and make them feel important, make them feel valued. Otherwise, I don't know what you're going to do.
Sounds like a lot of good news.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only good news is it's an easy solution. Like, it's just kind of recognizing what they want is what they've always wanted, and you've got to be able to give that to them. You know, provide them that engaging work experience, help them be better at their job, give them flexibility, give them some purpose besides just you show up to do a task and you go home and you feel burnt out and you feel like, I don't really know why I'm here. Like, anybody can do a tax return, and I'm just some cog in a wheel.
Sounds like they should build software to automate that.
That might be right.
I mean, that's part of it. That's part of what's going to help fix this solution is doing less work and actually leveraging technology. And it goes hand in hand because if we can use more technology, we get more work done, and the people then enjoy their job better. If they're saying, you know what, I'm not doing the bookkeeping anymore. BotKeeper's doing all that work. I get to do something more rewarding and interact with the client. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
So, well, speaking of BotKeeper, let's break for our first word from our sponsor, BotKeeper, and when we come back, we'll give you the first CPE code for this session. We'll be back in just a minute.
Feeling forgetful? That's okay. BotKeeper's Password Manager brings your firm to the next level in credential management. Now, your firm can centrally store, organize, share, and manage your passwords with one simple login, so you never have to worry about security or searching for a password again. Here's how it works. While Smart Connect is your location for connecting financial institutions, Password Manager securely stores passwords for non-financial institutions with which the client does business. Easily browse available accounts below. To gain access, click Request Credentials and enter the required information. You can also directly add a new account by clicking Add New. Just add a site name. In this case, we're looking for PayPal. Add in the URL, then click the username and password, and confirm the password for the account. You can choose to use your access within your firm only, or also provide account access to BotKeeper. It's time to get rid of your sticky notes covered in client passwords. Password Manager keeps it all in one secure place, so you can keep on forgetting your passwords with confidence.
All right, we are back, and we'd like to give you the first CPE code for this session. There you go. That's your reminder to record that CPE code. You'll get 2 more before the end of the session if you're planning on collecting CPE credit for this. So we've talked about some reasons why people are leaving, and it seems pretty straightforward. So what can employers do to perhaps circumvent that?
Where should we begin?
You're up first, my friend.
All right.
The pressure's on. Are you ready? Are you ready for this pressure?
They're the recruiting specialist.
Well, you know, you can't say you're an expert. I mean, one of the thoughts that I had is first you have to make sure that they're not that you have enough people to do the jobs. And I know it's like the whole goal is not hire more people, but there are alternative ways to hire people so that your existing staff is not overworked. So I would start with let's stop overworking the system that is our firm. So because you know how this goes, turnover is when an accountant leaves a firm. And voluntarily. And when they leave, the people that are left are with the work, and then somebody else leaves. And the same amount of people are left with the work that began, plus the firm's probably growing. So I would be considering alternative ways to just get work, hours in. So things like hiring freelancers. I think you do that in your firm, just remote freelancers to come in for a busy season and do tax returns or for an audit project. The rise of offshoring, I'm seeing a lot of offshoring opportunities. Look for ways you can automate technology, but we can dive deep on any of these. But I mean, I think if you want to eliminate your turnover, reduce your turnover, make sure your people aren't getting crushed by the work that your firm has right now.
Yeah, and if you're going to go that route of, okay, how do I take some more work off their plate? Like you said, offshoring, gig workers, whatever it is. Okay, how do you do that well? Really focus on get them the right work. You know, 'cause we found especially those gig people, they generally do better with some of the cleaner, more straightforward jobs. Mm-hmm. Where you give them this just kind of train wreck. You're saying, hey, you've never met this client before. You're not going to talk to them. Clean up this mess. Big surprise. It goes poorly. And firms, they're much better with, hey, this is much more straightforward. I need someone that can just kind of like finish this and get it done. They're really, really good at that. Or if you've got to do a little more work up front of like, it's a 40-hour job, someone in-house does 10, get to that point, it could then go to them. That's where you'll see those benefits. Usually where firms struggle with that, they try and just like offload the kitchen sink of like, well, I sent 40% of my work offshore and it was just a train wreck. And you're like, oh, what happened? Well, I just sent 40, you told me this. I saw Jeff speaking on Insurance Success. He said me use offshoring. And like, okay, but you got to think about how do you do that successfully, not just do it. And I'm sure BotKeeper can really help on its technology specific side to do that.
Yeah, a lot of it, I think, it starts with process. Because you can't just buy tech and you can't just hire people and say, hey, here's some work, take it on and go do it, or here's some new tech, inject into old process. It's going to fail and break down. You're going to have the problems that you described. So first you have to take a look at your processes that you're doing right now and say, how do I modernize these? How do I streamline them, make them more efficient? And unfortunately, any solution to a capacity challenge or gap is going to involve less capacity. So you're going to dig yourself deeper to do anything, whether it's hire someone new. Well, who's going to train the new person? The existing staff that's already overworked. If it's go offshore, who's going to take care of documenting the processes and sending that over? It's the existing staff that's overworked. Or inject, buy new technology, implement a new system. Once again, take time to train and learn and be overworked even more than you are. So you have to be comfortable and just know that there's no getting out of this hole until you go a little bit deeper to start. But you want to start first by looking internally at the processes that you're following, clean those up, prepare them for a more digital age and realm, and then start to look at whether it's in any one of the options you described, Jeff, whether it's freelancers or overseas, that's digital. Like these are not people that are going to be in the office. So get rid of systems and processes that involve analog documents or paper, or you'll find there's probably a lot of like steps and checks that literally make no sense to have anymore, or that technology does inherently. Has its own audit log or system of checks and balances.
Yeah, and I think you're right. One of the challenges, firms are just so busy that you're right. You're not going to get out of this without going further in. Yeah. And firms are so busy, like, well, I'm just too busy right now. I can't possibly carve out 5 more hours a week. Okay, so what you're saying is you got 2 options. You can keep going down this hole of getting busier and busier, losing more people. You know what's going to happen. Or you start spending more time thinking about the future. Yep. And you might have a 100% chance of success, but your chance of success is way higher than continue to do nothing and just be overwhelmed by this growing, like, oncoming wave.
And just be ready for it to take time. Yeah. Because in a shortage of accountants, finding a new one is going to take months. So if you need someone now, like, just prepare that this is going to be a multi-month endeavor to find and hire someone to implement technology, to establish a presence overseas. It's not going to happen overnight. So you got to be willing to make that investment and put the time in.
Well, and to hire the right people, right? Because when you just need a body, right? Like, are you really doing your due diligence to like interview the people and make sure that they're the right fit culturally, even for the firm? Let alone the skill sets could probably be measured, but I feel like is it a trend that people are just hiring too quickly, and then that's a big cost associated with losing those people?
Well, it's also going to cause you to lose the other people that you had before, because you're going to start messing with your culture. And you're going to be bringing in people that might not be the right culture, and if they start to flight and leave, they could take with them other people that are there too.
I don't think you can rush making critical hires. I mean, if we're talking about a small firm, that accounting manager, tax manager, cast manager has got to be a cultural fit. You can't rush it. But what's one of the weird things that's happening in the hiring market right now is really large firms, sort of the upper tier middle market firms are offering remote positions to CPAs working in smaller firms, and they're making a job offer in about a week. So interview 1 is on a Monday, the offer's on a Friday, with about a week deadline to make the decision. So these larger firms are rushing the timeline for the rest of us to make hires. So you can't be reckless with these hires. And then the thought occurred to me while listening to you talk. You shouldn't sacrifice on culture when it comes to these important hires that I'm talking about. But you can plug and play with freelancers and with offshoring. You have to have a process in place, though, for that to ever work. You're right. You will go deeper.
We're going to bring this back to our original point of how do we keep our people better. we kind of talk about culture. I mean, how many firms just don't have a culture? I mean, they've got something there. You have to. Anytime you have a group of people and you interact, there's a culture. But it's not a positive culture.
So what would a positive culture look like?
Like having some kind of thought behind it. Like, how do we want to operate? Like, what's our value proposition as a firm? Like, why are we here? Okay, and then how do we build that into what kind of culture we want to create? Are we focused just on doing tax returns? Are we doing CAS work? Are we doing audits, reviews, comps, whatever? Are we just like that path to get to the partner? Do we know work-life balance? What do you want to do? Which, to your point, takes time to think through. Okay, like obviously we're going to do tax returns, but how do we want to be to do that? What kind of firm do we want to create? What level of rewardment do we want to get out of our people? And most of them don't have any kind of. If you ask firms and firm owners and partners, describe your culture. I mean, they'll ramble on for a while, but we all know there's nothing there to really, sure, disrupt the bad culture.
One of the things that I have our owners do at Padgett when they make a key new hire is you need to do the paperwork before the new hire starts. And I think onboarding is the huge step we have to take and do right for good retention. So I want the firm owner or the manager to sit down and have a long discussion with that new hire and share their vision for where this firm is going and how we do things and what we aspire for it to be like to work here, and then specifically what their role is and what the results they ought to accomplish and the firm needs to accomplish because you were hired here. And we find that people get really attached to the owners or the partners when they just share the vision of where this thing's going. It's a good way to start your
and it gets them to even think through what is it? Because I'm sure that sometimes you guys have to coach them on, like, you might ask them first, okay, if you're ready for this call, what are you going to say, what's their vision? And they might be like, I don't know. I'm going to do some tax returns tomorrow. You're like, what about that after that? I'm going to do some more. Like, sometimes it takes some time to think through. Hey, spend a couple hours thinking through just that, like you just said, Jeff. Like, what do you want to do? Where are you going? Why should somebody work here? Mm-hmm.
I've never had an employer say that to me. I've worked at a handful of accounting firms, and it's, I walk in the door, here's your desk, here's a pile of tax returns, and that's it.
So when we were prepping for this call, we talked a little bit about efficiencies gained through technology and how that actually is kind of like shooting yourself in the foot if you charge by the hour, right? Because you're getting things done more quickly. But there are a lot of things that the staff accountants or whomever else can learn, and how do you incentivize them to learn those things? Is it like, I was using an example, I went to a manufacturing firm and there was, there's different widgets that you have to learn, and every time you learn a different widget, you get a pay increase and or a title increase. So can that be translated over to the accounting profession, and what would be some examples there?
Yeah, so, research has shown us you can have intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators. So an extrinsic motivator, like you said, we're going to pay you more to build this widget. We're going to give you a title boost. And what the research has shown across culturals and demographics and wages, extrinsic motivators are really good for a simple outcome. You build a widget, I'll pay you more money. But the more you want someone to think creatively and solve a problem, extrinsic motivators actually demotivate them because it puts you in this like narrow box of I'm just trying to create more widgets, so I'm not thinking about how to do it better. Mm-hmm. So it's really about, in our profession, as we shift, BotKeeper is a great example. If you can automate accounting and bookkeeping, what are we going to do? We need to do much more creative work and client service work, which isn't, I'm going to pay you more to bill some more time. I got to motivate you more intrinsically of how should I feel better on my job? And the research says autonomy, mastery, and purpose are the things that drive that intrinsic motivation. And I've been reading more some of the parenting books I've read for the kids lately. It's funny, I read it's like the same study comes up with how do you get kids to better study for their test. Mm-hmm. Don't offer to pay them money to get a perfect score. Find ways to intrinsically motivate them to take pride in learning spelling or doing math or whatever it is.
So what are some, on the three, autonomy, mastery, and what's the third one?
Purpose.
Purpose, okay. So autonomy, right? Mm-hmm. In a hierarchical structure, I stumbled on that word, with people at the bottom, they think that that's it. Like they crank out, they have one job and they crank it out. What can be an example of where they can have autonomy to like make a decision about, we're going to throw in an extra service for you for free, or like where you kind of already give them permission to make those decisions, but it looks like they're empowered to add value to the clients.
Yeah, I mean, so autonomy at that staff level can be kind of one of two ways. One is like when and where they work, which in our virtual world is way much easier than before. And the second thing is like what they work on. So some basic suggestions. Okay, you got a staff accountant that just started, and you're going to assign them these tasks they got to do. Okay, great. Maybe you say, hey, you know what? One Friday a month, I want you to take 4 hours, and I want you to brainstorm a better way to do your job. Like unstructured. Let them kind of have that time. And you see more and more creative companies do that. Google, Apple, or even Honda Motors are some of the most famous ones for that. A lot of the innovation out of Google is the engineers. It's called 25% time. 25% of their job is you do whatever you want. You've got 25% of your time to create whatever, and that's where a lot of Google's new products have come out of, because people feel more motivated to get in that and roll up their sleeves. And if you lose a couple hours a month from a staff accountant, you're not going to notice the difference. But they're going to feel more rewarded with a firm of like, they're trying to solve a problem. They're trying to get into this like, hey, like I see this problem every month when I try and do the bookkeeping for so-and-so. Well, I spent some time thinking about it. Hey, partner, what if we do this instead? They're going to be way more involved and invested in that than just you saying, hey, I'll give you an extra $5 to bill some more time.
And the hours lost, the reality is if they do take the time to actually like think through a new or improved, better way, a more efficient way to do the thing that they're doing, they're going to make that up tenfold in the time saved. So,
I mean, a profit share.
but if you bill by the hour, you shouldn't do any of these things.
We shouldn't bill by the hour.
You need to ensure you have as many hours on the books as possible.
Okay, well, actually, that leads to another interesting question from the audience, which is, what is still expected in the way of hours worked in a CPA firm? Has that changed due to COVID and expectations from millennials and younger staff?
I have a great story about that. Can I share it? So it actually has to do with delegation to younger staff, too. One of the ways to reduce your retention is to limit the hours that we work inside CPA firms. I mean, it's time to admit that we're spending too many hours working during busy season. There's this great firm in Fairhope, Alabama, Aviso Group. You might know like Dennis Sharon. He was the managing partner there. So they, 5 years ago, were looking at work-life balance and retention issues at their firm. They were losing people. And the partners decided, let's create this vision for this firm where no one works more than 40 hours a week. Yes, in a tax firm all year long.
We're all like that.
All year long. And this is called Project 40. And so I'll cut to the end of the story. They're 5 years into this project, and this firm that probably has 30 or 40 staff, their average last year was 45 hours a week. But here's the kicker about how they got this done. And this is amazing to me that they were able to accomplish this. And yes, it has reduced their turnover inside the firm. But the reason why it was a success, back to autonomy, was that the managing partners in the partner group were wise enough to delegate this project and its full leadership to the team of staff and seniors. It was the people that will be at the firm for the next 30 years, hopefully, that figured out how to make this firm reduce its hours. So I think the point of the question was, are we allowed to even make people work anymore? And that's
well, I think you can look at it one or two ways. Like, can we make them work, or are they going to quit? Or on the flip side, if we reduce the hours because of efficiencies, is our revenue going to go down?
I don't think we have a problem with people working. I think it's like an old school mindset that we assume people would prefer not to work, or that like given the opportunity not to work, they're not going to work. Like all the data that we've seen says our people work more hours than we want them to. Is like they're working to the brink of burnout, not us pushing them to the brink of burnout. And so, like for instance, we used to have vacation policy that specified so many weeks, and you got more weeks as you were more tenured, and everyone said we want unlimited vacation. It's like, don't do this. This is like this.
They don't take it, right?
You're not going to take it, and they didn't. Like so, we measured and tracked, and I told the whole team, we're going to look at this, and we might go back if the reality was people took less vacation as soon as we had unlimited. So now we pay you to take vacation. So counter culture to the like, hey, they're not going to work. It's like, no, actually We say, take a week off and you have to fully unplug. So no email, Slack, or whatever.
Good for you.
And then we'll pay you an extra $1,000 towards your, to use it however you want. But you only get it if we see an email, no $1,000.
Wow.
And that's helped with certainly, reducing burnout. And we, like I said, there's no issue out there with people working too little. If anything, like they've been on this project, for instance, Project 40, the staff got to own it. They got to try to ensure the outcome, which is in whose best interest, the staff's, and yet they're still 5 years later, 45 hours. Right, like it.
Yeah. But they consider that to be a huge win because they were at some big number before then.
But it's the opposite of like, someone might look at that and say, oh my God, 40, they're going to end up working 35 hours. If people really would prefer not to work and not to show up,
right,
you'd expect this to have gone overboard, not only be at 45 5 years later. People can't help themselves.
They can't help themselves.
We're going to take a quick time out and hear another word from our sponsor, BotKeeper, and we will return after that with the second CPE code for you.
BotKeeper Smart Connect provides secure access to your clients' financial accounts with real-time visibility into account balances, transaction details, and even the most recent bank statements. Forget about incorrect passwords, security barriers, and tedious manual logins. Smart Connect quickly and easily links all of your clients' financial data for a completely revolutionized month-end close. Let's take a look. Smart Connect links to your clients' financial accounts. Clients can provide their credentials directly to your firm to make a connection, or connect the accounts themselves through their portal. Here, you'll see Connection Requested, indicating the firm has asked the client for the credentials needed to connect to the account. You can also see a number of accounts that have already been connected here. To add a new account, simply click the Add New button in the upper right corner of the screen. This will open the Smart Connect window, where you can see existing connections and make any needed updates here. You can also search for a new account to connect or select one from the 8 major banks shown here. Simply type the name of the bank you want to connect and select the correct entry from the results returned. Then click Next and sign in via the secured API connection. Once an account is connected, you can click on it to get more details. Here, you see that statement downloads have been enabled, while you also see some other basic information about the account. To get more, you can click on the account name. This will give you a transaction-level view for the account, along with the beginning and ending balances. You can even export the transactions to a CSV file. You can even have an account-level look at the provider's statement by clicking View Most Recent Statements. Smart Connect allows uninterrupted categorizations of transactions without any need to upload statements manually, saving you time and effort while ensuring everything is done accurately and on time.
Welcome back, and we would like to present you with the second CPE code for this session. Be sure to record this code, and there'll be one more before we finish up in order to get your CPE credit for this session. So what else do employees want if they are thinking of leaving, but they could be enticed into staying, and in addition to cool benefits like what you've described, but what about in terms of their job and maybe besides shorter hours? What else do they want?
To be challenged. They won't, I think if you're going in the same motion again and again and again and you don't feel like you're learning or you're getting any better, like we all have this kind of like fear that we're going to waste life. And it's, one of the biggest regrets that people didn't do the things that they had dreamed that they would do one day or try something new. So I think a really key motivator or to entice people to stay longer in your firm is actually give them opportunities to learn new skill sets, new technology, new systems. But you can't just be go learn things on your own time. Because if they're working, as we were talking about, 40 plus hours a week in the business, do you think they want to then take their downtime to go do more work on behalf of you and learn something new? It's you got to actually carve the time out during the 40 hours to have that learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So Enrico, I'm sorry. If you're a small firm, right?
Yeah.
Most accountants aren't touchy-feely people that have like these kind of conversations. So who within the firm, like, whose job is it to make sure this is happening, documenting it, making sure it's not just a one-time conversation, that things are progressing well, like stay interviews? Who can do that if you don't have an HR person?
It's gotta come top down. So it has to start at the top. It has to be like part of the culture of your firm. So for instance, with BotKeeper, like I'm always talking to the team about taking time off. Like one of our values at the company is go hard. And I explained to them that means like when you're here, be here, give 100%. But that means when you're not here, be 100% not here. Like take the weekend and do not answer an email on the weekend. Do not pick up the phone, do not, if someone calls you by accident, like just ignore it. Like there's nothing that, like the house isn't gonna burn down overnight. So it has to come from the top, and it has to be the partners saying to the staff, we need to make a big investment in technology and changing process and new systems. To do that, we're gonna be putting you in training and courses and sending you to seminars or investing in you to learn the skill set that you're going to need to make this successful. And we're not just going to assume that it's going to be successful without you learning that, and we're not just going to assume that you're going to learn that on your own time.
And a lot of that's not very touchy-feely.
Yeah.
You're not trying to find, what's your purpose in life? And I want to talk to you about your deepest fears. It's just kind of saying, hey, like, what can we get you to do that you would find rewarding? Great, you want to be better at your job. You want to do more than just process tax returns. What else is there? And sometimes it's, what if it comes down to, we talked about this shortage in hiring, would you as a firm train your person to do something that didn't involve their day-to-day job? I had experience working with a firm where their manager, they couldn't get to stay. And what this person really wanted to do in life, he wanted his big life goal, kind of talk about those goals and things outside of work, he wanted to carve a canoe out of wood himself. Like that, but that was his big thing. And what got him to stay was the firm carved out time from like May through December for him to work on that. But that was important to him. And it's not important to everybody else, but why can't the firm support that? If that's what it takes to keep this person there and there's such a short supply, is it better to have this person around 35 hours a week for part of the year and they're still there and they're like, well, I really appreciate this firm because they let me accomplish my life goal. As weird as that was, they supported me versus like, hey Gail, like I really like to work on this. Oh, that's great. Like there's a stack of tax returns on your desk. Like, do you mind like, as long as you get those done and the extra 40 and you work 90 hours a week, like totally, like, what if we shifted it just a little bit?
And sometimes in the smaller firms where you don't have a dedicated marketing person or whatever, sometimes, believe it or not, the accountants actually have an interest in that kind of thing, right? So they might be able to come up with, take some marketing classes that the firm pays for them to do. They'll come up with an advertising campaign, like anything. I mean, that's not as nice as carving your own canoe, but it's an incentive and it benefits the firm in the long run, right? So.
Yeah.
But you have to give them the time to do it. So you got to either have it, as you mentioned, it's a half a day a month, or you carve out a session. You say, hey, Friday we're gonna leave the tax returns on your desk. We're gonna sit down as a team and we're gonna talk through some processes or things that we're doing and figure out how we can make them better. And just gonna be a brainstorming session.
Yeah, and it's okay to think through. Jeff, you mentioned before that old school mentality. We went through this of like, does everyone have to go through that? I talked to a firm owner this fall, wanted to sell his firm, and I was just asking him, okay, like, in part of the conversation, what are you gonna do when you retire? And his answer was, I don't know. Like, I don't have anything else. Like, he was 74, and his answer was just, I don't know. All I have is work. Is that really great? Is that what we want? Is that what you're going to say as a firm owner of, like, what do I want of the people that work here? I want them to look back at 70 and say, I have no life. All I have is a job where I work 70 hours a week. Why would we want that for anybody? Right. Why is that the only way that so many see to be successful is like, you commit, Jeff, you commit your life to my firm, and I will pay you something, not as much as me, but if you commit your life to that, that'd be great for me. Like, why? You don't want that job?
I want to build a canoe is what I want to do. If you're recruiting someone, you were just reminding me, Garrett, of a question that's so important to answer is, why would I trade a few good years of my life working for you? And if you don't have an answer to that, your odds of getting someone who's good. Qualified is not very high. So, and Enrico is right. It starts at the top. I mean, the leader of a firm's job is not to do technical work, but to build the system that hires people and keeps the people that deliver the work. And culture is absolutely a part of that. And I was gonna throw out another one since I have the floor for a second. And I think we're almost at the point where we don't even have to talk about this anymore. But just in case, we need to talk about remote and remote work. And I saw this, LinkedIn announced this, I'm gonna probably get the numbers wrong, but I think it was before the pandemic, 1% of the job postings on LinkedIn were fully remote. After the pandemic, 14% of the job postings are now fully remote. But half of all the applicants are applying to those 14% of fully remote jobs.
Oh.
Wow.
What do the job seekers want? They want to work from home.
Yeah.
And so if you're not allowing that, please tell me you are, but if you're not, that's a fast tweak to make. If you have, I think half of most firms half their new hires in the next 10 years will be remote. They won't work in the same market as where they live. So,
and people are worried about what happens to culture when you go remote.
Right.
And they think that this is like a social experiment and it can only last, like remote can only work for like a short period of time. I'll tell you right now, BotKeeper is 7 years old. Mm-hmm. We've been 100% remote since day one. And I'd say we have like one of the best, like super strong cultures at our company. And we have employees in 4 continents, 7 countries, and 40 states.
So what do you do to build culture when everyone's remote?
Goes back to one of the things we mentioned earlier. It's when you're interviewing, there's 2 questions I always ask people, which were, how did you get into what you're doing, and why? Why do you do this? Like, and what's the dream? The dream for this job. 2, what do you want to be when, like, outside of work? Like, what's your thing? What's your passion, life goal? Then, based on those 2 questions, you see if you can align both a work career path to the thing they want to be in work that enables them to do the thing that they want to do outside of work. And then I make sure, post you getting hired, I actually thank you for and remind you that you're putting a majority of your waking hours every day into my vision and trying to, in BotKeeper's case, revolutionize the accounting industry. And I want to make sure that someone actually says thank you to you for that. And you do those 3 things in itself set the stage for something different. Then you have to reinforce values and reinforce your vision. So we talk about our company's vision, our values, our goals, our 3-year goals, our 1-year goal, every single quarter at a minimum.
And all that stuff you would do whether you're in person or remote.
Yeah.
Right?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. That's where a lot of this, it doesn't matter. You mentioned a social experiment. Working in an office is a social experiment.
Yeah.
It's not like that's something we've done since the dawn of time. It came about, and exactly, everything you just described is the same thing someone would come in as a consultant and be like, Enrico, here's how you build culture in an office.
Yeah.
Wow. You took those same things and you applied them virtually.
Yeah. And use technology to distribute it. We do virtual marathons. We do, like there's so many things you can do today in a virtual environment. And you give people the just increased flexibility. Like, go do your grocery shopping during the day when there aren't lines. So you're not in lines on the weekend. And, make whatever you need to get done. Like, if you have to do it like at 5 o'clock at 5:30 or 7 o'clock at night after you put the kids down, we don't care when it gets done.
No, and try some things. Some things will work, some things won't work. And if it's not working, stop doing it. Like, don't try and force it. And I heard from a firm that, they were trying to do what you were saying, and they scheduled mandatory, everyone had to meet with somebody else once a day for like 30 minutes for like forced chit chat. They're like, this is awful. Like, it sounds awful. Like, you're scheduling forced like water cool conversation.
Yeah.
Just let it happen. Like, if I want to talk to Gail, why don't I just call Gail and just say, hey, Gail, it's a Tuesday at 3, like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't see you in the by the water cooler, but I want to chat, so like.
Or it goes back to management. So like the thing I do is I hold, it's a weekly CEO speakeasy. So it's 30 minutes, I'll be there, and whoever wants to show up can show up and we can hang out and talk. And the fun thing about it is we talk about all the things you're not supposed to talk about at the dinner table. Because if you're trying to build a diverse culture and have a diverse team, like the only way you understand those people is to understand their perspective on all the things we're not supposed to talk about at the dinner table.
I do have a follow-up question for Jeff, but I think we need to take another break, Gail.
Yeah, we want to do one more word from our sponsor, BotKeeper, and then we'll come back with the third CPE code and a few more tidbits for you. So we'll be back in a moment.
Work helps you to simplify communication and improve staff oversight. With it, you can quickly create, access, and manage all your firm's outstanding tasks in one secure place, empowering you to always have a pulse on where your firm is and where it's going. Work helps you, your clients, and BotKeeper stay organized around the work that needs to be done to manage your clients' books. We'll start in the Work section of the global view. When you open it, Work automatically defaults to a filter view of tasks assigned to you, upcoming tasks, and to-do tasks. Here, we see that currently, there are no tasks assigned to the indicated user. By changing the filter to Everyone, we can see all the open tasks for the chosen clients, regardless of assignee. Those tasks will appear below here. Simply change filtering to customize your views. For example, if you want to see all overdue tasks, you can filter for them under Status. You can also search for specific words that can help you narrow your searches even more. To change the client view, simply start typing the client name into the Navigate by Client space here, or select a client from the drop-down menu. Now that we've selected a client, we're in Client View. Along the left, we have additional options, including Transaction Manager, Smart Connect, and Password Manager. The main difference in this view is that any work items we see will be specific to this client only, and filtering will only produce results for this client. Now let's take a look at an individual task. Simply click on the task you want to review. You'll be taken to a new screen that clearly identifies the task you've selected in the upper left. Just beneath that, you'll see the details of the task. And off to the right, you'll see the action required to complete the task. Since this task requires an upload, you can use these buttons to browse files or folders to find the required item for upload. Just click it, navigate to, and select the required file. After that, you can choose to upload and save, which leaves the task incomplete, or upload and complete, which provides the required file and marks the task as complete. Stay organized and on top of everything with Work.
Welcome back. We would like to give you your third CPE code for this session. So be sure to record that code if you're planning on collecting CPE credit for this session. All right, Alexandra, where were you going to go
Everyone wants to hit the
forward
bell.
with?
It's
It
not.
never gets old.
Get rid of the bell. I don't.
Okay, so I would like to follow up, continuing to talk about remote work, and I'd like to talk to Jeff about a story that we shared. So my perception, and again, maybe it's an old school mentality because I'm more of an in the office kind of person, as much as I prefer to work from home, is again, when someone's in the office, right, you can sometimes visibly notice their level of unhappiness. Maybe they're not going to the happy hours. Maybe they're not. They're closing their door all the time. They're walking around with a mopey face, right? So how do you identify if there's a problem with somebody remote? And you had an interesting story about a group of bookkeepers and how they measured this, right?
Yeah, you're right. There's things you might miss when you go remote, but I think that one of the solutions to just finding the things you must do to keep people inside your firm in general is to survey them, is to ask them, and to do repetitive surveys to uncover issues and find problems inside the firm. And a story that came to mind recently was a friend of mine that owns a CAS practice, employs a lot of bookkeepers. They were dealing with really high turnover.
You said like 50 to 60%, right?
Yeah,
like that's
it was 50. It was 50 plus. So you're talking about having to hire around 50 people a year just to backfill, but they were also growing rapidly, as is a lot of the CAS market. So they're hiring 75 plus a year. Absolute pain. One of the things that they implemented, they came up with, was a weekly survey of all of their team, and it basically checked in on just a couple of questions. Was, do you have what you need to do your job right now? Are you clear what your job is? Do you feel engaged with your team? And how are you feeling about your work-life balance right now? Scale of 1 to 10. And or scale 1 to 5. This is sent out weekly, and I know that people go, that's way too much.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not way too much, because what ended up happening was if somebody scored, if a team member scored low on one of those questions, then a manager picks up the phone and calls them, checks in immediately. And so the end of the story is that it's just the changes that have made and the attention they've given to their team, that's all remote because of implementing these surveys, has drastically reduced their turnover. It's cut it in half or more now. But one of the stories that it picked up was so enlightening. They had a team member who said, gave a low score on my work-life balance. A manager picks up the phone, checks in with her, and it turns out she had a parent that had become sick, and she needed to take care of the parent, and did not think the firm would be flexible enough for her to deal with this problem.
To the point she was ready to leave, right?
She was already looking for jobs. She hadn't raised the issue to anybody. They just asked. They bothered to ask. They were able to quickly negotiate a work around for her to reduce hours and save the hire. And it just made me think, people aren't going to come to you with their problems, but they are going to get on a job board or call a recruiter and start looking for another opportunity where they think the grass will be greener. So it's on you. And I think surveying, this is just a great example of asking your team and being willing to check in with them, how important it is.
But a survey is a form of tech. Like at the end of the day, like if you're going to be digital, you're going to be remote, you're going to be keeping up with today, you got to be implementing the right technology systems to probe and understand. Like we do a weekly pulse too. And it's funny because we'll pick up on, I'm thinking of this one individual who almost always consistently scores a 4, never a 5. But the second we see the 4 go to a 3, we know this is there's a major problem here. Like something's off with this individual. So you got to monitor it, you got to track, and you got to put the right systems and technology in place to be able to keep up with the new world order that is today's environment.
Yeah, when we talk about KPIs and accounting firms, everyone's always asking what should I care about? Okay, let's take billable hours off the table. And what if you bring in something like this? Oh my God, make a survey with just 2 questions, right? Go simple. Right. You don't want to go big on tech. You can send an email with 2. You can send an email with 1 question. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's something that you're starting to see, what else can I monitor? Like you said, you're looking for those problems in person or virtually. What are they? And then sometimes the harder part, though, is, okay, if you've identified that, someone's got to deal with it. And not just be like, oh, that person went to a 3, I'm too busy to deal with his or her problem. I'm just busy. Time to move on. I got to do more work. To your prior point, it all takes time. Yep. And where are you going to spend that time? You can fix the problems, or they can get worse, and people are going to leave.
But don't just goes back to what we were saying, putting new tech in old process. Mm-hmm. If you just add a survey and you don't actually change your process to spend the time to look at the survey and to track how it changes over time and monitor it, then it's just a survey that is doing nothing other than accumulating some really valuable data that you're not bothering to analyze and look at.
And that's what a lot of the top 200, 100 accounting firms do. They're all doing that because it's something they should do. Yeah. They don't do anything with it. No. I'm like, what are you doing with that? I don't know. What do you think I should do with it? Anything? So great, you can do it, but your point, it's just tech. Use that tech. And if you're not going to use the tech, okay, find a different path. Yep. But there's ways you can track people and know what's going on. And a lot of it just comes back to caring. Just care about your people more than if you were caring about your people today, they would not leave so much. Because you talked about why are they leaving? They don't feel happy, they don't feel fulfilled, not a work-life balance. A lot of it comes back to just can you just care a little bit about them?
Mm-hmm. Have we talked about compensation yet?
No, and we've got 2 minutes left, so go.
You need to pay your people more. The Indiana University accounting professor did a study on wages in the accounting profession, and accounting wages have remained stagnant for 20 years. It's why KPMG announced a $160 million increase in compensation earlier this year, just as a makeup for this problem. If you've hired somebody, you've noticed that you're paying them a lot more than your current staff, and we got to get that right. That's a big reason why people are leaving, and it's the thing we don't talk about at the dinner table that needs to be addressed head on right now.
Yeah, and just remember, compensation is the base. Compensation is not going to fix all the problems. A lot of times firms think that because, to your point, compensation is not touchy-feely. It's not changing anything. I can just write a bigger check and solve this problem.
Money does fix a lot of problems, though.
It fixes a lot.
Sometimes only temporarily.
Yeah, and so with compensation, you've got to get them to feel I feel I'm paid or reasonably pay for my job. But past that,
it's not like it's there's like the what is it? It used to be 75K. Like 75K, you could afford. You actually met all the basics of life, like from you know, having all the things you need. It's definitely certainly higher now, especially with inflation. And I want to say like the average accounting salary was like 45 grand. So it's way under. It jumped 30 plus points starting
Even after
salary.
They had to spend an extra year in college to get that degree.
Yeah.
But it jumped 30%, I think, at the starting of this year for new higher salaries. It's jumping overseas in India by 20-something% every 6 months. So, and then you're wondering, how am I going to pay that much more for an accountant? You're going to charge more.
That's right.
It's very
But
simple.
can you also incentivize them with other things that are non-monetary as
Absolutely.
part of compensation?
Yes.
And what would be some examples of that?
But you understand pay is the base.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so key.
In our last moment, though, one quick tip from each of you,
Okay.
ways to incentivize your employees to stay.
Survey them.
Just one tip, I think, provide them more autonomy over how and where they work.
Give them autonomy over how they get paid.
Okay.
Take that.
All right.
Ring the
Well,
bell on that one.
Thank you all.
No CPE, that's just to make a point.
Thank you all so much. And thank you, BotKeeper, for sponsoring this session. We'll be back at the top of the hour with another session on CAS accounting, so we will see you then.